Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm Deepak. I've been got the very nicely good introduction. And so I think the floor was full of energy and talking so much agents from the last session. And it is what it is every day you open up your LinkedIn, you open up any newspaper, anything. And that's the one thing which comes into the picture is about the new model getting launched or the new agentic flow coming into the picture or some automation is happening. And that has become the new reality. So war and the automation, agentic automation, that's the two things we talk about every day. And why not? Like this is the era we are moving towards. And I think most of us has lived through the age where we have seen the transformation journey across the various different technologies from getting the computer introduced to each and every desk and getting the machines getting censored with IoT devices more and more. And I have lived through this journey as been explained when I was trying to teach the computer that 7 and I are not the same. It's just the handwriting difference. And I used to think like why somebody would write a letter or give it to machine and say that identify the characters for me. And it was like I was doing that project, but I was keep on scratching my head. What it gonna be used for one day? And now we have our answers in terms of OCR long after that research, and this is the same. So the idea is that we, in the manufacturing, when we, at least for me, whenever the manufacturing word used to come, I just used to think about plants, right? That's the only thing which comes naturally to the picture, and everyone thinks that modernizing our plants, making them more and more automated in nature will give us the most best productivity and everything in our picture. But there is more to it, right? We have done the IoT sensors and everything, but what is next? What is keeping us awake and what is keeping us scratching our head? Like how do we make more and more optimization? And that's where I'm going to talk about like when we think beyond the shop floor and what all it takes us to think. And it's a more collaborative session than putting it through where we put through the thought process and how the things are moving. Okay, so as I said, the theme is the machines is not where most of the money is getting lost. I don't think so. We are living in an era where we are seeing shutdowns. We are seeing the machines going down abruptly, and we have a problems in a day-to-day or hour or minute by minute where we are saying, okay, how do I make my machines work better? Or I'm living in a skepticism of that whether the machine will work or not. We have put in enough sensors, we have put in enough trackers, we now have enough video surveillance even in order to track how the machines are working. And to the level now the sounds and we can have a lot of predictive maintenance coming across it by the various nature of the machine's data that is coming into the picture. What we do with that data, that's a different story, but we have the enough data. So data is something which we all are getting richer and richer, and we don't know how to make it best out of it, right? So beyond the flow, as we're talking about, there are the 4 different pillars in every manufacturing unit, which is the most important aspect of a peripheral ecosystem which runs in parallel to the floor, where the most of the optimizations in the new age era is happening or is required in order to gain more optimizations out of it. So how I define those 4 pillars is from the warehouse, that where we are actually putting up all the effort in manufacturing and where it goes, how it goes, because from there only it will be, and with the complexity of B2C coming into the picture. So there used to be an era where we have to have a B2B, right? We are the big manufacturing plant, there would be a big order, those big orders would be dispatched in a certain logistics manner. The planning of the warehousing was very simpler, the execution of the warehousing was very simpler, but now with all the complexities coming into the supply chain and the batch and the D2C, it changes the ball game altogether. Then planning how the floor operates, right? The production planning, how much should I, how much floor should run for, how much should I produce, what kind of an insights, what kind of an actions I can give in order to make that production better. Then in order to run all this, I can only do the production more optimized if my procurement is more optimized, right? Because with the changing world, the raw materials and everything, the kind of a thing that we are living in, if I'm able to anticipate the commodities, and the commodity is the far end of the complexity, and there are other areas where, for example, let's just give an example. The moment the war hit, the people know that the petroleum prices will go up, the gas prices will go up. But it took time to understand that there would be a lot of supply chain issues in terms of those trucks who are operating will also get impacted. The paint will get 30% costlier. When the paint gets costlier, there are peripheral ecosystem, other chemicals which get. So all this in the real time as one event or two event, how they trigger the chain of events and the thought process and the amount of planning that it needs in the real time has drastically changed. And that's where it comes to the concept of we had an automation. So we lived in an era where we had, we all love with the Excel sheet that we have the data. But what we are trying to grab is with the huge amount of the data is how do I read that data? So dashboards solve that data. So we have a beautiful looking dashboards, so many dashboards, and then we start losing the count of amount of the dashboard the business team has started asking for. And the dashboards are rolling around, and I have seen that if I put so there is one case where I put the analytics on the dashboard and I figured out 80% of the dashboard were not even getting opened, right? And that's the hard reality of those dashboards. But why? Because as a human, ultimately what we are looking from the data that we are presenting in pie charts or any other form of chart is the insights, right? Then came the era of how do I present an insights to my thing. Then from the insights, it looked like what I will do with those insights, right? I have to end of the day take a decision, and I have to take a decision in the real time, right? So those decision making is where the agentic is coming into the picture, when it is transforming your ability to understand the data, ability to grab the insights out of the data. From the insights, you want to have an action, and from that action, you make a decision to execute or not to and what to do. And that's where the whole chain is coming into the picture of the multi-agent, where you have various different automated agents taking decisions and executing the things. Right? So that is what we are talking about, from execution to reasoning, right? So when we were doing in the old era, the automation, the things were very predictable, because we will tell if this, do this, else do this, else if, if. So 90% of the code base, if you look at any product, will be the if else or the switch statement. Then it comes to the configurability of the platforms that we have discussed, that you can configure those rules. You don't have to go in. But we realized, at least I realized in my life, when I was working with, there were scenarios when there were like 500 different rules and we don't know which rules conflicting with which rule, who got added which rule, and do we really need this rule in the current context or don't need that rule in the current context. So that's you call as a rule hell when you're living with the complexities of those rules. But the behavior and the systems that we work, they don't work based on the rules. They don't care what rules you have defined. In the real time, if there is an event happening which makes you think differently, and you have to analyze, okay, the amount I'm producing will not be consumed, which I thought through because of a real event happening, then you don't care what the rule says. You have to take a decision about how do I change my production pipeline? How do I change my warehousing strategy? How do I change my procurement strategy? All these are interlinked to each other. They cannot live in a silos that, okay, I understood one of the area understood that there's an impact to it. I will slow down the production. Oh, but I did not tell my warehousing that you need less trucks. I did not tell my supply chain that you would need less of it. You don't need the more of the contracting people to manage that camp. Or I did not inform the procurement team that you have to do the less of procurement, relook the thing. So this whole system connected to each other in a very real time and making a decisions, not just providing you the insight. So one thing which I usually say that, okay, if you look at yesterday, like how much time and how much the people were involved in taking one decision. Was it minutes, hours, days, or weeks? Then you will realize that the most important aspect, which is keeping the whole thing slow and making the whole thing losing out the money, is the ability to take that decision in the real time and the real time. The more the distance you reduce from taking a decision, which I call it as a distance decision, the more you reduce it, the better optimized your word would look like. And that's where the whole agentic concept is coming into and filling that gap, that how fast and how soon the decisions can be made in the real time. Yeah, so that's the batch word is usually the what we have lived through, right? Everything used to run in a batch. And that's where the big contracts coming in. They are the MRP batches. They run periodically. You done the planning. But what if the planning has to be changed in a minute-to-minute basis? And your agent is ability to see your D2C traffic, your ability to see how your geographical conditions are moving, how your inventory is moving, how the confirmed supply chains are working, all the whole ecosystem taking the decisions and communicating those decisions to each other. What used to be happen in automation, there is an output. So you feed into the data, there will be a certain the execution happening, and then there is an output. What I do with that output? With that output, again, there is a distance decision problem come into the picture, that output will be discussed, that output will be taken into the consideration, some actions will be drive out of it, then we will take a decision on whether what to do with those actions or not to do those actions. All this, when it happens, start happening in the agentic world and your decisions start happening, how do you communicate those decisions to each other to make more decisions? That's where the multi-agents come into the picture. So once you know that one agent which is looking at all the factors which can in the real time see it, okay, I am observing certain aspect, and those aspects I feel will make a lot of difference in how my whole manufacturing setup, end-to-end setup will get impacted. So let me start other agents to put into the work so that they can take a decision on my behalf and come out with those decisions and feed in each other to take a continuous decision into the real world. So I have lived into the world of where waterfallish to agile come into the picture, but one thing which I've lived through my life is about the continuous improvement. We have all heard about it, like the continuous improvement is the one thing which is because change is inevitable. But what we forgot is about the continuous improvement means the continuous decisions. Because you don't improve if you don't decide, if you don't take a decision, right? If I want to continuously improve, but my decisions are slowing down, then I'm not improving, right? It is not a continuous, I'm a batch mode, I'm in a batch mode of improvements. I'll take one decision, that decision time taken was X days, decision execution was Y days, then my whole continuous improvement is X plus Y day, and that is, as a human, I need a support to make more and more decisions. That is where the just continuous decisions framework come into the picture. Okay, yeah, this is the crux of what I was telling about. Everyone sitting in this room, the prime job and one of the most important job is about the decision taking. And there are many factors based on which we have to take those decisions. But if I spend most of my time, most of my aspect in understanding how one trigger impacts the most moving part of my ecosystem, then probably my time is going into the direction where I would be spending my time in order to see how I can automate and how I can make my other decision bit faster, right? So we all, how do we take decisions? One of the biggest aspects. So the ability for, we say that, okay, now we have an X experience in this arena to deal with the situation. What exactly that means, right? We have lived through the problem which has given us the context. And in that context, we are ability to use our judgment how that context will provide us to take the decision. If we are able to translate that context to our agent, then the most important aspect will become utilizing our experience to create that context, create that plan for that agent, right? And that is the true use of our experience where we say, okay, I'm not doing something which is not gained as an experience, because rest of the things can be done by the computer. But what cannot be done by an agent, which I have earned as a context over the years, which I know as a context what guardrails I have to provide in a certain scenarios, those guardrails, how they will be used in order to make those decision end of the day. So what our role becomes is more of a more executive role where we are channelizing our experience and translating that experience into make that agent work on things which are very monotonous and not requiring the human brain. And these are the just for few example is that how the teams are taking so much of decision in the, and how many decisions they have to take if we look at, is where the most of the time goes. So we spend a lot of time in meetings, but out of those meetings, what we want to grab is like reach some conclusion and move on. Okay, so if we look at the real world scenario, if you don't talk about the agent in this, there will be a planning meeting. The planning meeting will have certain agenda. It will have a certain context. It will have a lot of inputs coming into the picture, lot of point of views coming into the picture. Those point of views get translated into certain situations where you agree or disagree. And on those meetings, you agree on the aspect of that we need a more meeting to do the planning. But what if we are ready to take those risks and we start executing those plans in a minute-to-minute basis? And that's what is desired. Like we change our production line to just in time. We changed our production line to react to the situations which are happening in the real time. But how do they react if every planning which they need from the execution is in the batch mode of coming into the days? Right? Now, if my planning agent is seeing the impact of more production or the less production, can it do it in silo? Can it happen that I do not have enough warehousing possibilities and the decision making happening? How do we enhance? How do we optimize? Do I have a sufficient space to store that? Do I have a sufficient ways in order to do the warehouse planning? I have created one plan which was based on the output which was shared to me on the month start, that your month will look like this. And that has changed and shattered within a minute. How do I create a new plan on the fly which makes the every piece of that warehouse? If you ever live to a person, if you ever spoke to the person how complex it is to work in a warehouse, you will figure out the most of the things can be done automatically in that manner. And the same goes with the procurement team. Why you are telling me at the last minute, right? Because then they have to do so much of the activities which is the thing. So this ecosystem, when they work cohesively, if we, most of the time what the problem happens and where the agentic project I have seen failing, we start a POC in a very silo area, right? We'll say, okay, let me try pivoting something, optimizing in just the warehousing, right? And then we'll say, oh, that's not working out because the scale I was expecting it to work and the way it is expecting to work is not. So the best way is to pick up a use case which cut across and try to automate and live through that agent through the whole automation of that use case and create the value out of it. Okay, so it's not about the sensors, or that's not the competitors. So what I will say that this line which touched with it, like how fast and how better decision making happens is what will decide who will stay in the competition and who will not. So agentic, in many ways, when it gets translates into the automation, I beg to differ. And I beg to differ in the manner that it is not the thought process we should start with, because automation we have lived through our whole life, and we have seen a lot of automation eras. But this is an era of where we do not the use case, not the problem statement, how we execute and how do we automate the decision making, how the decision making becomes faster and faster, which will make our organization being more competitive in nature. So that's from me, Deepak. 30-second saves. So I was about to talk about cost savings, so I cannot spend over that.
Thank you so much, Bert, for saving those 30 seconds. You're going to get extra 30 seconds because of him. Let's have a huge round of applause. And you know what? I met someone in the back. I was just thinking about how impactful this summit is. I met someone in the back, and he was asking me, who's the speaker? Because this is the exact solution I was looking for. And he wanted to connect with you. I told him, do it in the networking break, not right
Absolutely.
now.
Love to do that. And that's what I love most about this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
I would request